Ivia Sky Yavelow earned a BA from Bard College in 2014 and studied at the New York Studio School. In 2015, she was awarded a Visual Artist Fellowship from Edward F. Appleby Foundation and completed a residency at their William Flanagan Memorial Creative Persons Center in Mantuck, New York. She currently lives and works and creates in the tri-state area. Her process and concept-based multimedia works range from installations to freestanding sculptures and works on paper, which she has exhibited since 2010. Her work has won awards in exhibitions at the New York Studio School and Trenton City Museum. In addition to her own studio practice, Yavelow collaborates with other artists and performers and works with art every day as a curator and administrator and teacher. Okay. So if you want to take it from there.
All right, thank you. So this first piece is called Holes, and a lot of my work tries to break down the plane of an image or the art object and make it interact a little bit with the wall or the context that it's shown in. It's a fairly recent piece, just from earlier in 2020, that tried to directly address the wall through a more opaque surface. In the past, I've done some drawings directly on the wall, but this was one of the first times that I had experimented with cutting directly into a canvas and kind of mixing that traditional material with more messy, kind of very non-precious approach to making. A lot of my work, I try to keep a loose, kind of irreverent approach and let things just happen and then step back and edit and add in more precise things like the cuts and positioning of the fibers on the edges of the canvas and little value details later on. And this work is part of a series that I'm still working on that, as I said, tries to address the context of art and bring where it's hanging into the piece, but also trying to kind of make extremely non-objective work and make things that are about the concept of unknowns and how we can address not knowing or gaps in our own knowledge of the universe and how those unknowns can interact with things that we're consciously aware of. So that's sort of the background of the holes. So they exist on that material level of literally bringing the material of the wall into the piece and then also enjoying that kind of unknown element that will come in by not being able to control all the time where it will be hung and what will be showing through the piece. And that same unknown or kind of fascination with unknowns informs a lot of how I handle materials. Like this one, you can kind of see the splashing motion. And I try, as I said, to not control or be too precious with materials and just let gravity and physics kind of take the wheel a little bit. Next, you can go to the next picture. I don't know if that one, yeah, this one is called Fragile Meteor. And for a long time, I was making pieces about black holes and outer space and dark matter because to me that represented kind of the unknown in a big way. Like I am probably not going to become an astronaut. I don't know that much about physics, and it was just a nice kind of fun thing to try and educate myself about. And so this piece was, it's had a little, it keeps changing every couple of years. This is wire and stuffed animal stuffing and foil wrapped in plaster bandages and then drawn on top of that. Again, letting the messy texture just happen and letting the materials shine through. And so now my work has been moving a little bit more into trying to formalize the shapes rather than reference specific objects like meteors, but this one is kind of, and I think I see it as a midway point between being just a shape and also representing an object. And this one is fairly small. It's about maybe 5 inches tall. Can you go to the next image, please? And I will say I also love the kind of variations of value, which leads me to, this is Runaway Parabola in Space. It's about 25 inches tall. And this one was really just trying to kind of experiment more with the gray zone in between. A lot of my work, as I'm sure you see, is very black and white. And I've been trying to add in more gray tones and experiment with what happens when, on the material side, when the two materials interact and blend to make gray, and also conceptually thinking about borders and the kind of demarcations that we make between what we're familiar and comfortable with and what we can see and what is beyond our knowledge, and trying to kind of hypothesize what might exist beyond our view of the world, and kind of put imagery to that process of understanding, where you can see, it's like you can almost conceptualize of something, but there's still a little bit of a fog in front of your eyes as we all try to learn new things, I hope. And this one, this one has India ink, and it's a lot of my pieces, even after I consider them finished, I tend to go back and rework them later. This was originally all India ink, like the two sections, one on the top and one on the bottom, those sort of mountain forms. And then over time, the white was layered over, making the fog layers going towards the middle. And then the oil stick is bringing in a little bit of that physics again with the parabola shape, thinking about orbits, and as we leave our kind of home familiar space of Earth, the lovely geometric shapes that can rule a lot of our exploration as we try to launch out into the unknown. And I think next is a little detail of the oil stick parabola shapes there. Acknowledging that I use the word parabola loosely, I'm by no means a mathematician, but that's just to give you a little idea of the detail texture there. So I've been really in love with oil, kind of the way that it can layer on top of other materials and really just stick to things and give you a great tactile kind of, I don't know, it just, my eye is very drawn to the sheen of it, but at the same time, it's kind of goopy and messy, and it has a history of being a very formal art material, but I enjoy using it in a messier way, along with sketching materials like the charcoal and the spray paint. Could you go to the next image, please? And this is Windows, another one in that series that originally was more of a twin to the Runaway Parabola, and has grown a little bit to become more of its own, somewhat more cartoony aesthetic with the outlines. This is one of the first pieces that I worked on when we started social distancing. And I was thinking a lot about the view out windows and how there's all this activity going on just through a very thin barrier, and really thinking about what that barrier means and how our concept of what's happening in the world beyond what we can see are informed by, I'm staring at my window right now, are informed by the material of that barrier, and how that border of the barrier, like the window frame, can kind of become like a portal into another world. So that's a little bit of the information behind that dark outline border there. And then to me, the outlined shapes and spray painted white squiggles around it are kind of all the new information coming in that's yet to be deciphered, still behind a bit of that fog. But at the same time, it also exists just as an abstract shape. And I really like the fact that a viewer wouldn't be able to look at it and say, oh yes, that is this object. You have to take your time and